They say family events bring out the best in people. I learned that sometimes they bring out their truest selves instead. It was supposed to be a celebration, my brother's wedding, the biggest Ellis family gathering in years. But when he looked straight at me, raised his glass and said, "No one hires the broke," the entire ballroom burst into laughter. The sound echoed through the marble walls of the Lakeview Country Club, clinking against champagne glasses and my pride. I smiled, pretending it didn't cut deep, but inside I could feel something shift, something quiet, sharp and permanent. The wedding was a masterpiece of money and image, all white roses, crystal chandeliers, and a string quartet flown in from New York. Everyone shimmered in designer suits and satin gowns, while I stood near the edge of the dance floor in a simple navy dress from a local boutique. Not that anyone cared to notice. I'm Nora Ellis, or as my family liked to call me, the one who never quite figured it out. My brother Ryan, the golden boy, was the CEO of our late father's company, Ellis Dynamics. I, on the other hand, had left the family business years ago to start my own. They said I was foolish, impulsive, ungrateful. Maybe they were right back then. When Ryan's toast ended, the laughter faded into murmurs of polite conversation, but the sting stayed. My father, Peter Ellis, patted Ryan on the shoulder and laughed along with him. That laughter hurt worse than the words themselves. "Don't take it personally, Nora," my cousin Lydia whispered beside me. "He's just trying to be funny." "Yeah," I said, swallowing the heat in my throat. "He's hilarious." I excused myself, stepping outside into the cool autumn air. From the terrace, the city lights shimmered in the distance, silent, merciful. I'd promised myself I'd never let them see me break again. Not after what happened 3 years ago. Back then I had left Ellis Dynamics, or rather been pushed out of it. My ideas for modernizing the company's medical AI were dismissed as childish experiments. Ryan wanted control, my father wanted peace, and I wanted freedom. So I walked away. I took my small savings, my broken pride, and one trusted engineer, Chloe Hahn, and started something from nothing. Helix Scan. No one believed it would survive a year. My brother even called it a cute hobby project. And now, standing on that terrace, his words replayed like static, "No one hires the broke." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Still thinking about that toast, a voice said behind me. It was Chloe. She'd been invited too as my +1, though I suspected Ryan didn't recognize her. She leaned against the railing, calm as always. "I should have expected it," I said. "Ryan's been performing for an audience his entire life." "He's performing for you," Chloe said. "Because deep down he still needs you to lose." I looked at her. "Well, he's doing a great job reminding me I did." She smiled faintly. "Then remind him that losing was temporary." I wanted to tell her everything, how Helix Scan had just signed a massive deal with BioCore Technologies, how we'd closed a funding round that valued the company at $20 million, how Forbes had just emailed my PR team asking for an interview for next month's cover feature. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because revenge, the kind that truly lasts, requires silence first. When we walked back into the ballroom, Ryan was surrounded by his new in-laws, basking in their admiration. He looked perfect, tux-pressed smile, confident arm around his glamorous new wife, Emily. He caught my eye for a moment, lifted his glass again, and mouthed, "Cheers, sis." I raised mine too, but my smile didn't reach my eyes. Later that night, I found myself sitting at the back of the room during the dinner speeches, watching the people who used to define me. My father with his trademark silver cufflinks, an air of authority. Ryan, the reflection of everything he believed a real Ellis should be. And then there was me, invisible in plain sight. "Excuse me," a waiter said softly as he passed by, setting a folded magazine on the empty chair beside me. Someone left this near the entrance. It was the latest issue of Forbes. I didn't think much of it until I glanced at the cover and froze. My face stared back. The headline read, "Helix Scan, the woman behind the $20 million AI revolution." I almost laughed out loud. The timing was divine. Chloe returned from the bar just as I slid the magazine into my clutch. "You okay?" she asked. "Perfect," I said, my voice steady now. better than I've been in years. Because at that very moment in that glittering ballroom full of people who dismissed me, a storm was quietly gathering, and none of them knew they were standing in the middle of it. As the band struck up another song, and Ryan spun Emily across the dance floor, I took one last sip of champagne and whispered to myself, "Enjoy your moment, brother. You've earned it." Because when the next issue of Forbes hits those shelves, the only name anyone will remember is mine. And for the first time in years, I smiled not out of politeness, but because I knew. The tables were about to turn. Growing up in the Ellis family meant one thing: success wasn't optional. It was inherited like an expensive watch or a family disease. My father, Peter Ellis, built Ellis Dynamics from a small diagnostics lab into a multi-million-dollar biotech empire. My brother Ryan was his protege, groomed since childhood to take over. I remember a family dinner a few years back just before Ryan officially became CEO. Dad, swirling his wine, had looked at him with an almost religious pride. Ellis Dynamics needs a leader with a public face, a name that inspires confidence, he said. Ryan has that. He understands the market, the board. It's time for him to take the helm. The words were a quiet dismissal of my own work, a clear signal that my father's vision for the company's future had no room for my childish experiments. I was an engineer. Ryan was a businessman. And in his world, only one of those was born to lead. That night I decided that if they wouldn't take my ideas seriously, I'd build a world where they had to. Years later, when I finished my master's in computer science from Stanford, I joined Ellis Dynamics partly out of loyalty, mostly to prove them wrong. I started in research and development, building machine learning models to analyze medical data. My algorithms began catching diseases weeks before traditional methods. But every time I presented results, Ryan took the credit. "We're a team," he'd say during board meetings, his smile polished and rehearsed. Dad never noticed. Or maybe he didn't want to. He saw Ryan as the future of Ellis Dynamics, charming, assertive male. The company's board adored him. I was just the background noise, the sister who helped with the tech stuff. One afternoon, I walked into a meeting I hadn't been invited to. Through the glass wall, I saw my father and Ryan talking to investors about a new project, the AI diagnostic platform. I'd spent 2 years perfecting. Ryan was calling it Ellis Insight, presenting it as his own. I waited until the meeting ended. Then I stepped inside. "You forgot to mention the person who actually built it," I said. Ryan turned, not guilty, just annoyed. "Nora, this isn't about ownership. It's about family legacy." "Family legacy," I said. "You mean your legacy?" Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. "Nora, don't start. You're brilliant, but you're impulsive. Ryan understands how to turn ideas into profit. You should learn from him." I remember standing there frozen as they made my work sound like charity. That night I walked out of Ellis Dynamics with my ID badge still warm in my hand. I didn't take the elevator down, I took the stairs. 31 floors, one step at a time, each one heavier than the last. For months afterward, I drifted. No job, no income, no plan. I'd been defined by my family name for so long that without it, I didn't know who I was. But sometimes falling apart is just the body's way of rearranging itself. Chloe found me during that time. We'd met years earlier at a biotech conference. She was working in data analytics, smart and grounded in a way that made me feel safe. Over coffee one night, she said, "Why don't we start our own company?" I laughed. "We have no funding, no office, and I just got disowned." She smiled. "Then we've got nothing to lose." We started Helix Scan in my apartment with secondhand computers and ramen dinners. We built AI models that could identify rare genetic conditions with 98% accuracy. Investors didn't take us seriously at first. 2 women, no pedigree, no capital. But within a year, we caught the attention of a venture fund in San Francisco. When our first contract came through a pilot project with a private hospital chain, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt at peace. It wasn't about proving my family wrong anymore. It was about proving I could live without them. Still, I watched Ellis Dynamics from afar. Ryan had officially become CEO after my father stepped back. The company went public the following year. The IPO made him a multi-millionaire overnight. His face was on magazine covers, his name on panels and conferences, and every time I saw him saying things like, "Innovation runs in our blood," I wondered if he ever remembered where that blood came from. The irony was almost poetic. Ellis Dynamics had started to lose relevance just as HelixScan began to rise. My models were outperforming theirs in every benchmark. I heard through former colleagues that investors were shifting interest toward us. But I stayed quiet. Success, I'd learned, was a lot more powerful when you let it speak for itself. Still, the past has a way of echoing when you least expect it. A week before Ryan's wedding, I got an email from an anonymous source with the subject line, "Thought you'd want to see this." Attached was a scanned document, Ellis Dynamics' upcoming partnership contract with HelixScan. My company. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere, of course. They were licensing our core algorithm for a product Ryan was calling Ellis Vision. He was planning to announce it after his honeymoon as his company's revolutionary breakthrough. My company was about to make him rich again, and he didn't even know it. I remember closing my laptop, staring out the window, and feeling something cold and sharp bloom inside me. The wedding was in 3 days. He would make his jokes. He would make them laugh. And then, for the first time, he'd see me. I didn't need revenge that night. I just needed the truth to walk into that ballroom wearing my name. The wedding invitation arrived on thick ivory paper with gold edges, the kind that smelled of money and approval. Mr. and Mrs. Peter Ellis request the honor of your presence at the wedding of their son, Ryan Ellis, to Ms. Emily Thompson. My name. Nora Ellis was printed neatly in the lower left corner like an afterthought. I held the envelope for a long moment before tossing it onto my kitchen counter. HelixScan's office was buzzing around me, monitors glowing, the hum of servers constant. My small team was deep in code analyzing datasets that would eventually save lives. The contrast between their quiet brilliance and that pretentious gold-embossed invitation couldn't have been louder. "Are you going?" Chloe asked, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of coffee. "Apparently I'm invited," I said. "Probably so they can prove I turned out fine without their help." She smirked. "Then show them what you did." I didn't answer, but I couldn't stop thinking about the timing. In less than 2 weeks, Forbes would publish their feature on HelixScan, my face, my story, my $20 million company. The interview had gone better than I'd dared hope. The reporter Dana Holloway had looked at me across the glossy conference table and said, "You know, you're what people imagine when they hear the phrase, the quiet comeback." Quiet. That word had followed me for years, from boardrooms where men talked over me to dinners where my father toasted Ryan's achievements and barely acknowledged mine. Maybe it was time to let them speak quietly in a way they couldn't ignore. That night I sat in my apartment, the invitation lying on the table beside my laptop. Outside, the city flickered in silver and amber. I pulled up HelixScan's analytics dashboard, revenue up 60%, investor confidence climbing, social engagement soaring. Every metric screamed success. Still, something felt unfinished. I opened a blank document and typed the plan. It wasn't revenge, at least not the childish kind. It was a revelation. I didn't need to hurt them. I just needed them to see. Step 1. Accept the invitation. Step 2. Say nothing about the Forbes feature. Let the timing handle itself. Step 3, let Ryan speak first, he always would. I imagined it, the ballroom, the speeches, the laughter. I could already hear him saying something slick and cutting like he always did, some polished insult disguised as humor. I'd smile through it like always. And then someone would pull out their phone, or the wedding planner would turn on the projector for a slideshow, and there it would be, the new issue of Forbes, the headline glowing across every screen in the country. Nora Ellis, the woman who redefined AI and outsmarted Wall Street. Timing wasn't just luck. It was precision. The next morning, Chloe walked into my office with a mischievous grin. "I talked to Dana from Forbes," she said. "They're moving up the publication date. Apparently they want to drop the issue on the same weekend as the wedding. National exposure." I looked up from my laptop. "You're kidding." "Nope. Friday night release. The wedding was Saturday. I tried to hide my smile, but Chloe caught it anyway. "You planned this," she said, half accusing, half impressed. "Not exactly," I said, "but sometimes the universe has a sense of humor." That week, I barely slept. Between investor meetings, the Forbes final edits, and prep for our upcoming product launch, my days blurred into a rhythm of purpose. Yet every night when I closed my eyes, I saw the same image, my brother's smirk as he raised that champagne glass. No one hires the broke. He had no idea. 2 nights before the wedding, I met with Dana Holloway for one last interview segment. She wanted a few candid shots for the online article in my workspace, surrounded by the hum of creation. "You seem calm," she said, snapping a photo as I adjusted a circuit board. "I've learned that revenge is just another form of noise," I said. "I'm done being noisy." She smiled. "That's poetic. I'll use it." When she left, I stood alone in the glow of the monitors. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger, confident, steady, untouchable. I wasn't the girl who'd walked out of Ellis Dynamics with a broken badge. I wasn't the invisible daughter who got talked over at dinners. I was the woman who'd built something that couldn't be erased. The day before the wedding, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Nora." He said, his voice clipped as always. "You're coming tomorrow, I am." "Good," he said. "Your brother will appreciate it. And don't make things difficult. It's his day." I bit back a laugh. "I wouldn't dream of it." He hesitated. "You've done well for yourself, I hear." I waited. He didn't elaborate. Of course he didn't even. Now he couldn't bring himself to say the words, "I'm proud of you." "Thanks for calling, Dad," I said, ending the call before he could. That night, Chloe helped me choose a dress, dark emerald satin, understated but strong. "You look like power in soft form," she said. "Good," I replied. "That's exactly what I want them to see." When I slid the Forbes preview issue into my clutch before bed, I didn't think of it as a weapon. It was proof, quiet, irrefutable proof that I'd survived their dismissal and turned it into something extraordinary. Tomorrow, Ryan would stand on that stage and play the golden sun again. And I would be there, not as the forgotten sister, not as the failure they pitied, but as the storm they never saw coming. You could have heard a pin drop. The laughter that had filled the ballroom seconds before evaporated, leaving behind only the sound of champagne bubbling in untouched glasses. I stood perfectly still, my hand resting on the back of my chair, watching as realization spread through the crowd like a slow electrical current. It started with the whispers. Is that really her 20 million? Her company? Someone near the front table zoomed in on their phone, confirming the truth on the glowing screen. My Forbes cover, captured in stunning color, shone from every device in the room. Nora Ellis, the quiet force behind the AI revolution. Ryan's face went pale. For the first time in his life, he looked small. My father's expression shifted from amusement to something unreadable, a mixture of disbelief and confusion. He glanced down at his phone, adjusted his glasses, and whispered something to my mother, who looked like she'd seen a ghost. Ryan broke the silence first. This is a joke, right?" His voice was too loud, too tight, cracking at the edges. I tilted my head slightly, smiling just enough to make it sting. "If it is, Forbes is in on it. They don't usually joke about $20 million. The guests murmured. Cameras clicked. Someone, probably one of Ryan's college friends, started to laugh nervously, trying to diffuse the tension, but it only made everything worse. I turned slightly toward the nearest table, where several executives from Ellis Dynamics were seated. "You've met me before," I said, my tone calm and even. "But back then, you called me the intern who didn't understand business." Funny how things change. Ryan stepped forward, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. "You planned this," he said quietly. "You waited for my wedding to what?" I interrupted. "To exist. To finally be visible." I took a sip of champagne. "No, Ryan. I didn't plan anything. I just showed up." He looked at Dad, desperate for backup. But Dad wasn't looking at him anymore. He was still staring at the screen, rereading the article headline, like maybe he'd missed something. Forbes says your company's worth 20 million, he said finally, his voice low. Helix scan. I thought you were still freelancing. Guess I've been busy, I replied. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, not mocking, not cruel, just astonished. People who'd once dismissed me were now looking at me like I was someone they wanted to know. The shift was almost tangible, like gravity had changed direction. Ryan's fiancée, Emily, looked around helplessly. Ryan, she whispered, but he didn't answer. His jaw flexed, the vein in his temple visible even from where I stood. The DJ, sensing disaster, fumbled with the playlist and accidentally hit the wrong track. A few seconds of upbeat pop blasted through the speakers before dying again, leaving an awkward echo. That's when the best man, Kyle, stepped up. He was pale but smiling, trying to salvage what was left of the evening. Well, I guess congratulations are in order for both newlyweds and our very own tech mogul, Miss Nora Ellis. The guests clapped hesitantly. The kind of applause born more from confusion than celebration. Ryan glared at him. Shut up, Kyle. But it was too late. The room had already turned. The hierarchy that had ruled our family for decades, the perfect son, the obedient daughter, had just shattered. Dad finally rose from his chair. Nora, he said, his tone clipped, controlled. We should talk. Privately. I nodded, of course. But I should warn you, I have a press interview in the morning. My time's limited. A few people gasped. Even Mom looked stricken, torn between pride and panic. We stepped away from the main crowd into a smaller side room lined with mirrors and gold sconces. The noise outside dulled to a low hum. Dad turned to me. Why didn't you tell us? I met his eyes. Would you have listened if I had? He hesitated. You know that's not fair. It's exactly fair, I said. You made it clear that Ryan was the future of Ellis Dynamics. You told me once, remember, that I wasn't built for leadership, that I was too emotional, too idealistic. That was years ago, he said quickly. Yes, I replied. And I spent those years proving you wrong. His jaw tightened. You embarrassed your brother tonight. No, I said softly. He embarrassed himself when he mocked me in front of 300 people. All I did was stand there while the truth introduced itself. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally he sighed. You've done well. I can admit that. That's new, I said, and for the first time my voice trembled, not from anger, but from something that felt dangerously close to forgiveness. When we stepped back into the ballroom, the atmosphere had changed completely. People were still talking, phones out, reading, sharing, scrolling through the article. I caught snippets. AI diagnostics, medical revolution, female founder. Ryan was sitting now, shoulders slumped, Emily's hand hovering uncertainly on his arm. He looked like someone whose spotlight had been ripped away mid-performance. As I passed, he muttered under his breath, You think you've won, don't you? I paused. There was never a competition, I said quietly. You were playing for applause. I was building something real. He didn't look up. I found my seat again, ignoring the stares, the congratulations, the sudden syrupy compliments from people who had ignored me for years. The band started playing again, but the energy was different now, fractured, uneasy. For the rest of the night, I sat back and watched it unfold, the whispers, the sideways glances, the cracks forming in the image my family had worked so hard to maintain. By the time I left, the air felt lighter, colder too. As I stepped outside, I could still hear Ryan's voice echoing in my head. Nobody hires the broke. I smiled to myself, pulling the Forbes issue from my clutch, one last time, the glossy cover reflecting the moonlight. No, I whispered, but the broke can build something nobody else can buy. The next morning, my phone looked like it had survived a digital hurricane. Over 100 unread messages, 27 missed calls. The notification banner from Forbes is still pinned at the top of my screen like a golden badge of validation. I sat in bed at the Lakeview Hotel, hair a mess, coffee untouched, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor as the night before replayed in my mind. The silence, the stares, the way Ryan's laugh had evaporated mid-sentence. It wasn't the chaos I remembered most. It was the stillness afterward. That perfect, breathless moment when everyone in the room realized the hierarchy had shifted forever. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Ryan. Ryan. You really couldn't wait for another day, could you? Me didn't realize I had to schedule my success around your wedding. No reply. I set the phone down and opened my laptop instead. HelixScan's analytics dashboard glowed on the screen, website traffic up 300%, overnight social engagement exploding. Investors were messaging Chloe nonstop, and journalists were flooding our inbox with interview requests. The Forbes article had gone viral, trending under hashtags like Women in Tech and Ellis Family Drama. Chloe called before I could even sip my coffee. You broke the internet, she said, half laughing, half exhausted. Our site's crashing from all the traffic. The servers are melting. Let them melt, I said. We'll rebuild. She paused. How are you holding up? I hesitated. Honestly, I don't know. I thought I'd feel triumphant. But it just feels strange. Like I walked through a door I've been banging on for years, and now I don't know what to do inside. That's called power, she said. Get used to it. By noon, I was packing up to leave the hotel when my father's assistant called. Mr. Ellis would like to meet you. Lunch at the Langford Club, 1 o'clock. Of course he would. The Langford, his domain, where old men traded stocks and gossip over martinis and legacy deals. I almost said no, but curiosity won. When I arrived, he was already seated at a corner table, newspaper folded neatly beside his plate. He didn't look angry, just unsettled, like someone trying to solve a puzzle with a missing piece. Nora, he said, gesturing for me to sit. You look tired. So do you. He chuckled without humor. You made quite a scene last night. I didn't make it, I said. It made itself. The waiter appeared with menus, but neither of us looked. I read the Forbes piece. Dad said, his voice softer than I expected. You built this company from nothing. From less than nothing, I replied. I had student debt and an old laptop. Everything else came later. He nodded slowly, his eyes distant. Impressive. Truly. He paused, stirring his coffee, though it didn't need stirring. But I never wanted this for you. All this noise. I wanted you to have stability, to be part of something safe. The confession caught me off guard. Safe, Dad. You called my ideas childish experiments. You wanted me to be a reflection of Ryan, not a leader in my own right. He looked up, a flicker of pain in his eyes. I thought I was protecting you, he said quietly. Ellis Dynamics is a shark tank. I saw how you got hurt, how easily you were dismissed. I believed Ryan was better suited for that world, that he was stronger. He was just better at taking credit. I said the words sharp. He didn't argue. Instead, he leaned back, the image of the patriarch fading. You've done remarkable work. I can admit that. But did it have to happen this way? Publicly, you embarrassed your brother tonight. No, I said softly. He embarrassed himself when he mocked me in front of 300 people. All I did was stand there while the truth introduced itself. I didn't plan for any of this, Dad. I just stopped letting you decide my worth. For a long moment, he said nothing. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had signed every contract and built an empire. They looked tired now. He sighed. You're right. I was wrong. I thought I knew what success looked like, but I missed what was right in front of me. The confession felt heavier than any argument. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about seeing finally the man beneath the title. When the check came, he reached for it automatically. Old habits die hard. Dad, I said, before he could sign. You don't have to keep pretending you're still in control. He froze. His hand trembled slightly. Then he placed the pen down carefully. Maybe it's time I learned how to let go. I didn't know whether to believe him. But for the first time in years, I saw something human in his eyes. Not dominance, not disappointment, just fatigue. When we stepped back into the ballroom, the atmosphere had changed completely. People were still talking, phones out, reading, sharing, scrolling through the article. I caught snippets. AI diagnostics. Medical revolution, female founder. Ryan was sitting now, shoulders slumped, Emily's hand hovering uncertainly on his arm. He looked like someone whose spotlight had been ripped away mid-performance. As I passed, he muttered under his breath, "You think you've won, don't you?" I paused. "There was never a competition," I said quietly. "You were playing for applause. I was building something real." He didn't look up. I found my seat again, ignoring the stares, the congratulations, the sudden syrupy compliments from people who had ignored me for years. The band started playing again, but the energy was different now, fractured, uneasy. For the rest of the night, I sat back and watched it unfold, the whispers, the sideways glances, the cracks forming in the image my family had worked so hard to maintain. By the time I left, the air felt lighter. Colder, too. As I stepped outside, I could still hear Ryan's voice echoing in my head. Nobody hires the broke. I smiled to myself, pulling the Forbes issue from my clutch one last time, the glossy cover reflecting the moonlight. "No," I whispered, "but the broke can build something nobody else can buy." By Monday morning, my inbox had turned into a digital avalanche. Reporters, investors, talk show producers, even former classmates who hadn't spoken to me in a decade. Everyone wanted a quote, a soundbite, a piece of the story. Helix Scan's headquarters looked like a war room. The phones wouldn't stop ringing. Chloe stood by the glass wall headset on, juggling 3 conversations at once while trying to wave at me through the chaos. "CNN wants you for a live interview," she mouthed. I raised a brow. "Which one?" She grinned. "All of them." I laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Just days ago, I'd been invisible at my brother's wedding. Now half the world wanted my opinion on artificial intelligence, women in STEM, and family redemption arcs. The first interview was with Forbes Live. Dana Holloway, the same reporter who'd written the article, sat across from me under the blinding studio lights. "Nora," she began, "your story has become the most read feature of the week, over 5 million views in 48 hours. Did you expect this kind of response?" "Not at all," I said. "I just thought people might connect with a story about perseverance. I didn't realize they'd also connect with the irony." She smiled knowingly. "Your brother's toast has gone viral too. The quote, 'Nobody hires the broke,' is trending worldwide. How does it feel to be the face of poetic justice?" I paused, then smiled softly. "I don't see it as justice, just balance." The interview went on questions about the company, our AI diagnostics, our rapid growth, and of course the number that made headlines, $20 million. I talked about equity shares, innovation, and what it meant to lead a female-driven tech startup in a male-dominated field. Every word felt deliberate, steady, not a performance, but a declaration. Afterward, Chloe pulled me aside. "That was perfect. Confident, but grounded. Investors are eating it up. Our stock's up another 6% since you sat down." I exhaled, trying to steady the adrenaline rushing through me. "I didn't build Helix Scan to chase stock prices." "I know," she said, smiling. "But it's nice when the world finally catches up to your worth, isn't it?" That night I stayed late at the office, the city glittering beyond the glass windows. The hum of servers was almost comforting, familiar, predictable, unlike the sudden spotlight. My team worked quietly around me, their screens glowing in synchronized blue. I opened the news feed on my phone and scrolled past headlines that made my stomach twist, the sister who outsmarted Silicon Valley. From family shame to tech queen. Ellis Empire. Faces fallout. After viral wedding moment. That last one made me pause. The article detailed how Ellis Dynamics' stock had dropped nearly 12% since the wedding. Investors were apparently reconsidering confidence in leadership after recent revelations. Ryan must have been livid. I set the phone down and rubbed my temples. Success shouldn't feel this heavy. But it did. At around 9, the office door opened and Chloe walked in holding 2 takeout boxes. "You skipped dinner again," she said, setting one in front of me. I wasn't hungry. "Eat anyway." She perched on the edge of the desk. "You look like you've been running on caffeine and revenge fumes for 3 days. I smiled faintly. "That's not far from the truth." She studied me for a moment. "You know this isn't just a headline anymore, Nora. You're becoming something bigger, a symbol." Women keep writing to us saying your story gave them courage to quit toxic jobs, start their own businesses, and stand up to people who doubted them. You realize what that means. Her words landed heavier than I expected. For the first time, I saw beyond my own victory. It means I can't afford to screw this up. Exactly, she grinned. And that's why tomorrow we start planning your keynote at the Global AI Summit. They invited you this morning. I blinked. You're kidding. Nope. You'll be on the same stage as the CEOs of Tesla, Neurosys, and Biovance. A laugh escaped me, the kind that sounds like disbelief and awe all at once. From being called unemployable to standing next to billionaires. My father's going to choke on his morning coffee. Chloe leaned back, smiling. That's the thing about people who underestimate you, they eventually have to read about you. After she left, I sat there in the quiet hum of servers and thought about Ryan. About how he'd once told me, "You'll never survive in this world without our name." He was half right. I didn't survive because of our name, I survived in spite of it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an unknown number, unknown. Congratulations on the success. Let's talk about HelixScan's future. We're interested in acquiring it. Below that was a signature that made my blood run cold. Ryan Ellis, CEO, Ellis Dynamics. I stared at the message, the words blurring slightly as anger mixed with disbelief. Of course, when the empire starts to fall, you buy the one that replaced it. But this time, I wasn't the girl begging for a seat at their table. I was the woman who owned the table and could decide who sat there. I closed the message without replying and shut off my phone. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass, bright and unyielding. Let him wait, I whispered to no one. Tomorrow, I'd face him on my terms. Not as his sister, not as his failure, but as the woman who built what he never could. The next morning, I woke up to another text from Ryan. This time, it wasn't a snide remark, it was a meeting request. Ryan, lunch at the Foundry, 1 p.m. Let's talk business. Business. The word felt like an insult coming from him. He'd stolen my ideas, taken credit for my work, mocked me at his wedding, and now he wanted to talk business. Still curiosity, or maybe closure, won out. I texted back a single word. Me. Fine. The Foundry was one of those modern downtown restaurants with steel walls, exposed beams, and a waiting list longer than a tech patent filing. When I arrived, Ryan was already seated at a corner booth, wearing his usual tailored arrogance crisp navy suit, gold cufflinks, the Ellis signature confidence that had always felt like a performance. He stood when he saw me, though it looked like it physically pained him. Nora. Ryan. You look... He hesitated. Different. That's what happens when people stop underestimating me. He gestured toward the seat across from him. Please, sit. The waiter arrived almost immediately. Ryan ordered wine without asking what I wanted. Of course he did. And when we were alone again, he dove right in. I'll get to the point, he said, leaning forward. Ellis Dynamics is restructuring. The board wants to expand into AI diagnostics. We've seen what HelixScan is doing, it's impressive. I think there's room for collaboration. Collaboration, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. That's an interesting way to say acquisition. His jaw tightened. You're sharp as ever. Yes, the proposal includes a full acquisition. Ellis Dynamics would purchase HelixScan full integration. You'd retain a title, of course. VP of Innovation, high salary, stock options. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Not out of amusement, but disbelief. You're serious? He frowned. I'm offering you stability, Nora. You've built something incredible, but you're still small scale. We can take it global. You'd have resources, infrastructure, everything you need. And you'd have control, I said. Over me. Over my company. His expression flickered. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the clinking of silverware and quiet hum of conversation around us filling the silence. You don't get it, he said finally. The market's volatile. You've had a lucky break, but it won't last forever. Partnerships, mergers, that's how you survive. That's how Dad built his empire. Exactly, I said softly. And that empire is falling apart. He stiffened. I've seen the reports, Ryan, I continued. Your stock's down 12% since the wedding. Investors are panicking. The board's losing faith. And now you're here hat in hand pretending this is a business deal when it's really just damage control. You think you're untouchable, he snapped. You think a magazine cover makes you a titan. You're still my little sister playing CEO in a borrowed lab. I smiled. If that's true, then why are you trying to buy me? His face reddened, and for a second the mask slipped. The polished executive facade cracked just enough to reveal the insecurity beneath. He recovered quickly. Fine, he said through clenched teeth. You don't want the acquisition? Then consider it a merger. 50-50 split. The Ellis brand with your technology. Everyone wins. I folded my hands on the table, studying him like a case study in desperation. You want to use my success to clean your image, I said. And you think slapping the Ellis name on my work will make people forget what you did to me? I'm trying to make peace, he said. No, I said quietly. You're trying to make a profit. For a moment he didn't respond. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder sleek embossed with the Ellis Dynamics logo. He slid it across the table. Just read it, he said. If you walk away now, you'll regret it. This is your chance to be part of something bigger. I stared at the folder for a long moment before pushing it back toward him. I already am. He blinked. Excuse me. Helix Scan isn't small, Ryan. It's lean, focused, built from passion, not pedigree. You built your company on inheritance. I built mine on hunger. You had shareholders. I had faith. And that's the difference between us. He sat back, shaking his head slowly like he was trying to understand the creature sitting across from him. You've changed, he said finally. No, I said. I've just stopped needing your approval. For the first time in my life, Ryan didn't have a response. He just stared at me, jaw clenched, ego deflating, one heartbeat at a time. When the waiter returned to ask if we wanted dessert, I smiled sweetly. Just the check. Ryan didn't move. I slid out of the booth and stood adjusting my jacket. Tell Dad I said that Helix Scan isn't for sale. Not to Ellis Dynamics. Not to anyone. He looked up at me, eyes sharp. You'll regret this. I leaned down slightly, just enough so only he could hear. I already regretted trusting you once. Never again. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, my heels striking against the tile in rhythmic defiance. Outside, the sunlight hit the glass towers just right, casting reflections that looked almost like flames. I pulled out my phone and texted Chloe. Me. Cancel all acquisition meetings this week. Schedule a board call tonight. We're going to expand on our terms. Chloe, big move. What's the strategy? Me, simple. We're not merging with Ellis Dynamics. We're replacing them. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and smiled to myself. The family business had always been built on legacy. Mine was built on revolution. The following week felt like standing inside a storm of headlines. Every time I refreshed my phone, another article appeared. Ellis family rift, deepens Helix Scan, rejects buyout offer. AI. Startup declares independence. It wasn't just business news anymore. It was gossip. I had become a narrative, the prodigal daughter defying the empire. Our office was busier than ever. Chloe walked into the morning meeting holding 2 coffees and a grin that told me she'd been up all night watching numbers. You're not going to believe this, she said, dropping a stack of reports on the table. Our shares are up 20% in 72 hours. Investors are calling this the Ellis effect. I raised an eyebrow. They mean the one where your family underestimates you and accidentally makes you rich, she laughed. Exactly that one. I skimmed the report. Engagement had tripled. Clients from 3 new countries had reached out asking for partnerships. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were ascending. But success, I was learning, came with weight. My name was everywhere. My schedule was chaos and my family had gone radio silent except Ryan, who I knew wouldn't stay quiet for long. By Wednesday, he broke his silence in the most predictable way possible, a press conference. I watched the live stream from my office, coffee growing cold in my hands. Ryan stood at a podium in front of the Ellis Dynamics logo, his expression confident, his voice perfectly modulated. At Ellis Dynamics, he said, "We believe innovation should serve humanity, not egos." Recent media distractions have created misconceptions about our company's vision. Let me be clear, Ellis Dynamics remains the leader in medical AI. Always has been. Always will be. My jaw tightened. Subtle, polished, venomous. Classic Ryan. He went on answering reporters' questions with the kind of charm that had always made people forget the knives behind his smile. When one journalist asked about the failed HelixScan merger, he smiled faintly. "We explored opportunities for collaboration," he said. "Unfortunately, emotional decision-making sometimes gets in the way of rational business strategy." Chloe looked at me wide-eyed. "Did he just call you emotional on live television?" I exhaled slowly. He just declared war. By the end of the day, Ellis Dynamics' PR team had leaked an internal memo suggesting HelixScan's tech was unproven and risky. It was a transparent attempt to discredit us, but it worked. Investors grew jittery. The next morning, our stock dipped 8%. The vultures circled fast. Chloe burst into my office with her laptop open. "You need to see this," she said. "They're running a campaign against us. Anonymous accounts, fake reviews, rumors that we're under investigation for data misuse." I rubbed my temples. Of course. When manipulation fails, they resort to smear tactics. "What do we do?" she asked. "We fight," I said simply. That night I stayed at the office long after everyone else had gone home. The glow of my monitors painted the room in cold blue light. I opened every news report, every thread, every whisper they'd planted, and countered it with facts. Transparent statements, verified data, screenshots of our ethical audits and FDA certifications. When I was done, I sent an open letter to every major outlet in the industry. Innovation built on fear is fragile. At HelixScan, we build on truth. We don't inherit our credibility. We earn it line by line, algorithm by algorithm. The letter went viral overnight. By morning, the narrative had flipped again. Tech analysts were calling my response a masterclass in transparency. The Wall Street Journal published a headline that made me laugh out loud. "The broke one breaks the silence." Ryan must have been fuming. Sure enough, my phone rang that afternoon. Unknown number, but I didn't need caller ID to know who it was. "Ryan," I said as I answered. "You think you're clever," he said coldly. "But you've made this personal. Do you know how that looks to investors? Like authenticity?" I asked. "Like recklessness," he snapped. "You're not ready for the scale you're stepping into." "Maybe not," I said, "but I'm ready for honesty, which is more than I can say for Ellis Dynamics." He was silent for a beat. Then softly, "You really want to burn everything down, don't you?" "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending it wasn't already on fire." I hung up. By the end of that week, the tide had turned again, this time in our favor. Our stock recovered. Media outlets hailed HelixScan as the ethical alternative to old guard biotech. Applications poured in from engineers who'd once worked for Ellis Dynamics, now eager to join us. When Friday came, I called an all-hands meeting. My team gathered in the open space we used for brainstorming sessions. Desks pushed aside whiteboards filled with sketches and equations. "This isn't just about surviving the Ellis campaign," I told them. "It's about building something that outlasts it. We don't retaliate with chaos. We respond with progress." Someone in the back raised a hand. "So what's next?" I smiled. "We expand. International trials, partnerships in Europe and Asia. And we double down on transparency. We're not chasing stock prices, we're setting standards." Applause filled the room, raw and electric. As the crowd dispersed, Chloe stayed behind. "You know he won't stop, right?" she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "But neither will I." Later that night, I stood by the office window, looking down at the city. The streets alive with light and motion like circuitry under glass. I thought of Ryan, of Dad, of every person who had told me that my dreams were naive, my ambition misplaced. And I thought of the company I'd built, the people who believed in it, the quiet hum of purpose beneath the noise. I didn't need to destroy Ellis Dynamics. I just needed to outlive it. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in the Helix Scan boardroom when Chloe burst in, her phone held high like a torch. "You're going to want to see this." She tossed the phone on the table. The headline on the screen nearly made me choke on my coffee. Ellis Dynamics. Under federal investigation, allegations of data misuse and fraud surface. Below it, the subheading read, "Whistleblowers claim diagnostic manipulation to boost stock value." For a moment, the room went completely still. Then slowly, every face turned toward me. "Tell me this isn't your doing," Chloe said, half grinning, half horrified. I shook my head. "No, but karma works faster than I do," she whistled softly. "You couldn't have scripted this better if you tried." As the article spread, the story unfolded hour by hour. Anonymous sources inside Ellis Dynamics alleged that Ryan's team had falsified data to make one of their new AI diagnostic tools appear more effective than it really was. Investors had been misled. Patients potentially endangered. The Department of Justice had opened an inquiry. By noon, Ellis Dynamics' stock had plummeted 25%. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt quiet. I sat in my office staring out the window at the skyline that shimmered under the late autumn light. My phone buzzed nonstop, reporters, investors, even my father. I ignored them all. Then Chloe knocked softly on the door. "He's on TV," she said. I turned to see Ryan's face on the office monitor. The press conference was live. He looked exhausted, his tie slightly crooked, a rare crack in his armor. "I want to assure our shareholders and the public," he said, voice tight, "that Ellis Dynamics operates with complete integrity. Any claims otherwise are baseless." A reporter shouted from the crowd, "What about your sister's comments last week regarding transparency and data ethics?" Was she implying? He cut her off sharply. "My sister has no involvement with Ellis Dynamics. Her opinions are her own." Another reporter shouted, "But is it true that she offered your company's AI framework to government partners first?" Ryan's jaw tightened. No further questions. He turned and walked off stage, his expression unreadable. The broadcast ended, but the image of him lingered in my mind. Not the smug brother from the wedding, but a man watching his empire crumble in slow motion. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen counter, the Forbes issue still on the table, now dog-eared and worn. For the first time since the article dropped, I felt something strange pity. Ryan had built his life around control, around winning. And now, with everything unraveling, he probably didn't know how to breathe without it. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something in my gut told me to answer. "Hello, Nora." His voice was rough like gravel. "It's me." For a heartbeat, I said nothing. Then quietly, "Ryan." He exhaled. "I didn't do it. Whatever they're saying, it wasn't me." I closed my eyes. "Then who was it? Someone on my team, maybe. I don't know yet. But it's bad. Really bad." "You built a culture where people thought that was okay," I said softly. "That's on you." "I didn't call for a lecture," he snapped. "Then why did you call?" He hesitated. "Because I need help." That caught me off guard. "Help, I know you have contacts. People in tech regulation, government. I need a statement, someone credible to vouch that I've worked ethically, that I'm not the monster the media's painting me as." I almost laughed. "You humiliated me at your wedding, tried to buy my company, called me emotional on live television, and now you want me to save you, Nora." His voice cracked slightly, the first sign of weakness I'd ever heard in it. "Please." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. There was a part of me, the little sister who used to follow him around, desperate for approval, that wanted to help. But there was another part, stronger now, that remembered every insult, every dismissal, every time he'd used me as a punchline. "You once told me nobody hires the broke," I said quietly. "Looks like I was just between investments." He was silent. Then quietly, "You're really not going to help me." "No," I said. "But I'll give you something better advice. Tell the truth. It's the one thing you've never tried." And then I hung up. The next morning, Helix Scan's name was trending again, but this time not because of me. The media had connected the dots. Former Ellis Dynamics engineers had joined my company months ago, bringing with them data logs that now exposed the fraud. The irony was brutal. Ryan's downfall was built on the very algorithms he once mocked me for. By evening, Ellis Dynamics had suspended trading. Federal subpoenas were issued. And for the first time in decades, the Ellis empire wasn't dominating headlines for innovation. It was imploding under scandal. Chloe found me sitting alone in the break room, staring into a cup of tea that had gone cold. "You did the right thing," she said. "I didn't do anything," I replied. "I just stopped protecting him." She smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's the only justice there is." That night before leaving the office, I walked into our server room, the hum of machines steady and low like a heartbeat. Every line of code running through them had been built from nothing but belief and stubbornness. I ran my hand along one of the cold metal panels. "We did it," I whispered. "Not revenge, not triumph, just the truth finally unchained." Outside, the city lights pulsed against the dark glass. Somewhere my brother was facing the same silence that had once swallowed me whole. And for the first time, I didn't need an apology. The tables had turned, and I was done looking back. 3 days after Ellis Dynamics collapsed under investigation, my phone rang while I was reviewing a prototype report in the lab. The number was from New York. I hesitated before answering, wiping my hands on a paper towel. "Hello, this is Nora Ellis." "Ms. Ellis," a warm, confident voice replied. "This is Dana Holloway, senior editor at Forbes. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I froze. Forbes. The same magazine that had been sitting on my desk for weeks with my face already on the cover. "No," I said, steadying my voice. "Not at all." "How can I help you?" She laughed softly. "Usually it's the other way around. You help us. We're preparing our annual Forbes 30 Under 30 innovation issue, and we want to do a follow-up feature, a long-form interview about HelixScan's growth, the fallout with Ellis Dynamics, and your company's approach to ethical AI. I blinked, momentarily speechless. I'd be honored, I managed. Wonderful, she said. We'd like to do an in-person shoot this Friday. Your stories resonated with so many, especially after your open letter about transparency. It's the kind of leadership people are hungry to see in tech right now. After she hung up, I sat there for a full minute, staring at the lab's soft white lights reflecting off the polished steel. My company, the one my brother had dismissed as a vanity project, was now being hailed as the future of ethical innovation. And Forbes wanted to talk about it again. Chloe burst into the lab a moment later, her phone already buzzing with notifications. "You're trending again," she said breathlessly. "Helix Ethics has over 2 million shares. Everyone's quoting your line about truth over inheritance." I smiled faintly. "I didn't write it for them." "I know," she said. "That's why it worked." By Friday, the Forbes team arrived at HelixScan headquarters, stylists, photographers, editors. They transformed our minimalist meeting space into a temporary studio. They wanted to capture me in my element. No gowns, no luxury staging, just the CEO who built an empire from a laptop in a sublet apartment. During the interview, Dana sat across from me, recorder on pen poised. "Let's start with the obvious," she said. "You've become something of a symbol for modern entrepreneurship, resilience, authenticity, innovation. But this all began in your brother's shadow, didn't it?" I met her gaze steadily. "Yes. Ryan and I were raised in a family where success was a bloodline, not a belief. But I learned early that legacy doesn't mean loyalty, and that sometimes you have to build your own foundation, even if it means standing alone. Do you see what happened to Ellis Dynamics as vindication?" The question hit harder than expected. I thought of the headlines, the photos of Ryan leaving his office under federal escort, the online speculation about our family. "No," I said quietly. "Vindication implies satisfaction. I don't feel that. What I feel is relief that truth eventually surfaces, even when people try to bury it." Dana nodded thoughtfully. "And what's next for you?" Now that Helix Scan's valuation has crossed 20 million and you're considered one of the most influential women in tech, what comes after that? I smiled. Sustainability. Real impact. We're developing an AI-driven diagnostic tool for rural clinics, affordable, accurate, scalable. I want to prove that innovation doesn't have to come at the cost of humanity. As the photographer circled us taking candid shots, Dana leaned forward. Last question, she said. If you could say one thing to your younger self, the girl everyone laughed at, the one your brother mocked, what would it be? I paused, my throat tight. I'd tell her she was never the broke one, I said finally. She was just investing in something no one else could see yet. Dana smiled. That's your headline. After the interview, the team packed up and left the office, returning to its quiet hum. Chloe came to my door holding a mock-up of the upcoming issue on her tablet. The headline read, Nora Ellis, the CEO who turned humiliation into a $20 million lesson in integrity. Below it, the subheading, her brother said, Nobody hires the broke. Now she's hiring hundreds. I laughed softly. Subtle. Chloe grinned. Viral, subtle. That evening, I stopped by my parents' house for the first time in months. The lights in the living room glowed soft and golden, a contrast to the sharp brightness of my office. My father was sitting in his armchair reading. When he saw me, his face softened with something that looked like pride and maybe regret. Your mother's making tea, he said quietly. We saw the interview preview. I sat down across from him and he sighed. I didn't realize how blind I'd been. To what you were building. To what it took. I nodded. You didn't have to understand it, Dad. You just had to believe it mattered. He looked down at the Forbes issue on the table, my face smiling up from the cover. You did what I never could, built something without needing to inherit it. Mom appeared in the doorway, teacups in hand. We're proud of you, Nora. Truly. It was quiet after that, not awkward, but peaceful. For once I wasn't proving anything. I was just there. Later that night, as I drove home, my phone buzzed with a notification, Forbes cover drops, tomorrow share count climbing. I smiled to myself, rolling down the window to let the cool air fill the car. Somewhere out there, Ryan was reading the same news. But this wasn't about him anymore. This was about what came after. The redemption. The legacy built from the ashes of expectation. And the girl who was never broke, only underestimated. The invitation arrived on a Thursday morning, slipped between investor briefs and production reports. I almost missed it at first. Heavy cream cardstock, embossed gold lettering, familiar handwriting. Ryan Ellis and Alexandra Pierce invite you to celebrate their marriage. For a moment, I just stared at it, torn between disbelief and laughter. After everything, the investigation, the fallout, the silence, Ryan was getting married. And somehow, I was on the guest list. Chloe spotted the envelope in my hand later that day. Please tell me that's not what I think it is. Oh, it's exactly what you think, I said. My brother's wedding. Again. She groaned. After what happened last time, you should get hazard pay. I smiled faintly. Let's call it research. When the day arrived, I stood outside the grand entrance of the Willowbourne Hotel, an old money venue in downtown Chicago, dripping in marble and self-importance. The same kind of place our parents would have chosen. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and champagne laughter. Every corner whispered of wealth and reputation. Guests mingled in designer suits, the air thick with perfume and pretense. I caught a glimpse of my parents near the head table. They looked older, smaller somehow. Mom spotted me first, her expression softening as she waved me over. You came, she said, almost surprised. I figured one Ellis scandal per wedding was enough, I said dryly. Dad chuckled under his breath. Let's try to keep it that way. Across the room, I saw him. Ryan standing near the band, perfectly tailored as always. His smile practiced, but his eyes tired. When he noticed me, something flickered there. Not anger, not arrogance, just unease. He walked over slowly, stopping a few feet away. You look good, he said finally. So do you, I lied. He gave a small, humorless laugh. I didn't think you'd come. Neither did I. We stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, two ghosts haunting the same ballroom. He glanced around, lowering his voice. "The investigation's over. No charges. The board forced me out, though. New management's taking over next month." I nodded. "That's probably for the best." He looked down at his glass. "Do you ever think about how it all could have gone differently if we'd worked together instead of against each other?" "Every day," I said honestly. "But we both know that's not who you were back then." He nodded, slowly accepting it. "Maybe not. Maybe I just didn't know how to see you as anything other than competition." There was no anger in his voice this time, just exhaustion. Before I could respond, the band shifted into a soft melody. The crowd began to gather as the ceremony was about to start. Ryan took a step back, straightening his tie. "For what it's worth, Nora, I'm sorry. For the wedding, for the company, for all of it." I studied his face, the proud brother I'd once admired, the rival who tried to crush me, the man finally learning humility. "I believe you," I said. He nodded once, grateful, then disappeared into the crowd as the music swelled. The ceremony was beautiful, understated, all white roses and soft light. But I barely heard the vows. My mind wandered back to that night months ago, when Ryan had said those words in front of everyone, "Nobody hires the broke." And now here I was. The sister who had been laughed at, featured in Forbes, leading a company worth $20 million, sitting in the front row, while the world that once dismissed me slowly faded into irrelevance. After the ceremony, I slipped out to the terrace for air. The city skyline glittered beyond the glass railing, reflections dancing across my champagne flute. "Thought I'd find you here," Chloe's voice came from behind me. She handed me her phone. "You're trending again." I groaned. "Please tell me it's not another, quote, war." She shook her head, smiling. "No." Forbes posted a follow-up article. "The Ellis Legacy, from Rivalry to Redemption." It's about how you attended your brother's wedding grace after the storm. People love it. I laughed softly, taking a sip of champagne. "Redemption makes a better headline than revenge." "You're not wrong," she said. "But for what it's worth, this one feels earned." As the night deepened, I found myself back inside, surrounded by familiar faces. Some offered polite nods, others genuine smiles. A few even whispered things like, "I read your article," or "Congratulations on Helix Scan." I realized then that I wasn't an outcast anymore. I was the example, the one who'd been written off and then rewritten her own story. Toward the end of the night, Ryan approached me again. His new wife Alexandra was beside him, elegant, poised, kind-eyed. She smiled warmly. "I've heard so much about you," she said. "All bad, I hope," I replied lightly. She laughed. "Mostly. But I don't believe half of it." Ryan smiled faintly. "Alex insisted we invite you. Said it was time to stop pretending ghosts don't exist." "I like her already," I said. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small black box. Inside was a silver bracelet, simple, elegant, engraved with a single word, integrity. "I had this made before the wedding," he said. "Consider it a peace offering." For the first time in years, my throat tightened. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for that word. It's the one thing I never sold." He smiled genuinely this time. "I know." As the night wound down, I stood near the exit, the bracelet cool against my skin, the faint echo of music trailing through the hall. I thought of how far we'd both come from humiliation and rivalry to something resembling peace. The last time I'd left one of Ryan's weddings, I'd walked out invisible. This time, I walked out free. The Forbes issue hit newsstands the following week. I found it waiting on my doorstep early Monday morning, the glossy cover catching the light like a mirror. My reflection smiled back beneath the bold headline, "The Broke One Who Built a Billion-Dollar Idea." I stood there for a long moment, the city still quiet around me, the early sun glinting off glass towers. There was something poetic about it, not the fame, not the valuation, but the fact that the words now belonged to me. I wasn't Ryan Ellis's little sister anymore. I was Nora Ellis. At the office, the energy was electric. Helix Scan had gone from an upstart to a phenomenon. New contracts poured and the share price hit another high, and investors were practically begging for meetings. But amid the noise and celebration, I kept thinking of that night months ago, the wedding, the laughter, the sting of my brother's voice saying, "Nobody hires the broke." Now that phrase follows me everywhere. Only this time it came with awe instead of mockery. Chloe dropped a thick folder on my desk, breaking my thoughts. "Morning, boss. You're officially speaking at the Global AI Summit next month, keynote slot." I blinked. Keynote. I thought I was on the ethics panel. "Not anymore," she said with a grin. "They bumped you up. Visionary leaders in human-centered innovation. You're on the same lineup as the Secretary of Commerce and the CEO of Google." I exhaled slowly. "You realize this means Ryan's probably watching that live stream, right?" Chloe smirked. "Then make it a good show." That evening I stayed late at the office after everyone else had gone home. The hum of computers filled the silence. Through the glass walls, the city looked alive, streaks of headlights cutting through dusk, the pulse of everything I'd built from nothing. I walked into the lab and paused in front of the first prototype we ever made, a clunky, uneven machine with hand-soldered circuits and wires still taped together. We'd built it in a rented basement with second-hand parts and too much caffeine. I ran my fingers along its edge, remembering those nights, the failures, the near-bankrupt moments, the ridicule. And somehow the memory didn't hurt anymore. It felt necessary. When I got home that night, I opened my laptop and began writing something new, not a press release, not a strategy memo. A letter. To the ones who were told they were too small, too late, too naive. To the dreamers everyone calls broke before they call brilliant. You don't need permission to build something that matters. You don't need legacy to make history. You just need to start. I wasn't writing to Ryan or even to my family. I was writing to the version of myself who'd believed for far too long that worth was something other people handed to you. By morning, I'd posted the letter on our company's site. Within hours, it was everywhere. Thousands of comments flooded in young founders, single parents, immigrants, students, all saying the same thing. "Thank you for reminding us it's okay to start broke." That phrase, "start broke," caught fire. It became a movement, a mantra, a slogan printed on hoodies and conference banners. I hadn't meant to start a campaign, but maybe that was the point. The best revolutions are accidental. A few weeks later, I was in San Francisco for the Global AI Summit. Backstage, I could hear the muffled roar of the audience, thousands of entrepreneurs, engineers, journalists. Chloe squeezed my shoulder. "This is your moment," she said. When I stepped out under the lights, the room erupted. I took a deep breath, looked out at the crowd, and began. When I started Helix Scan, I was told I wasn't qualified, that I didn't have the right degree, the right experience, the right connections. Mostly I didn't have the right last name. Laughter rippled through the audience. I was told nobody hires the broke. But I've learned something: the broke aren't the ones without money. They're the ones who stop believing they can change their story. The applause that followed was deafening. After the speech, as the crowd filed out, a young woman approached me, nervous, hopeful. "Miss Ellis," she said, clutching a notebook. "I'm starting my own company. Everyone says it's impossible. Could I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. She hesitated, then asked, "How did you know when to stop proving them wrong?" I smiled. The moment I realized I already had. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I sat by the window watching the fog roll over the bay. My phone buzzed, a message from Ryan. "Ryan, saw your speech. You were incredible. Ryan, I am proud of you, Nora. Truly." For a while, I just stared at it, unsure how to respond. Then I typed back, "Nora. Thanks, Ryan. You were wrong about one thing, though, Ryan." "What is that, Nora?" Turns out somebody does hire the broke. They just end up hiring everyone else, too. I laughed softly to myself and set the phone down. Outside, the city lights glimmered like stars caught in motion. Somewhere out there, another girl was probably being told she wasn't enough, that she was chasing fantasies, that success had a price she couldn't pay. And maybe someday she'd read my story and realize what I finally had. that being underestimated was never a curse. It was the capital. Because sometimes the best kind of wealth isn't inherited or bought, it's earned in silence and revealed only when the world finally starts to listen. And that, I thought leaning back against the window was worth more than $20 million. If you've ever been told you'd never make it, tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you proved them wrong or better, yet how you proved yourself right. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories about revenge, redemption, and the quiet power of rising anyway.